When a new line of toys comes out, it's really exciting, especially for kids and, well, especially for kids at heart that want to deep dive and collect them all. And we want to kind of know how long this line is going to last. Is it shelf worthy, to paraphrase Elaine from Seinfeld? Is it worth having, collecting because it's going to be a big enough collection that we could dedicate a shelf to? Now, sometimes when new toy lines come out and we see them repetitively go on sale or lose shelf space, it can be a sign that a toy line may not go as long as we want to. This doesn't necessarily mean it will stop, but yeah, when you see lots of toys from one brand showing up on clearance a lot, it's not exactly the greatest sign. But again, it doesn't mean everything's over. We like to know, though, there's a guarantee of longevity, and the only toy lines that really have this are what are called evergreen toy lines, and there's not as many of them as you may think, but they're very well known. Barbie, Hot Wheels, Transformers, these lines that just never go away from retail. They're always there in some form or another. A good example of a wobbly one is Ninja Turtles. It tends to be in retail for a long period of time and then off for a long period of time and then on and off. So it's not quite evergreen. It's in the middle. All right, so most major religions have spent a lot of time analyzing where we're going to go when we go kaput. So do most world mythologies, have some kind of ending in place to inspire people. But what about toys? What happens when toys are no longer needed? And I'm not just saying, getting tossed out when kids grow too old. Let's do a little bit of a deep dive because there are some very sort of standard reasons why toy lines end. And usually when you apply one of these, it's kind of easy to see what's coming. So the first and most obvious one is when the content bombs. Most toy lines are tied directly into content. A big one that I worked on and personally experienced was the Green Lantern theatrical movie. While I had a fantastic time working on the line, well, the movie, shall we say, kind of stretched things a little thin, especially because they used all their budget up on the suit, and, well, the script didn't exactly match what we saw on screen. But man, the toys that we got to make based on that script, and that's usually when development happens, you're developing the toys based on early drafts of a script, not final product. And there were so many toyetic elements. It was, on paper, perfect for a toy line. You had instant transformation, vehicles, role play, the idea of creating something from your imagination. I mean, that plays really well with kids. So, yeah, everyone was really excited for the Green Lantern toy line. We thought this was going to be sort of the next Iron Man and be an evergreen toy that could actually last at retail. Well, yeah, not so much. But we were able to do some cool screen-to-shelf items like the that Gatling gun, which we worked with Warner Brothers to get as the very first CGI scene done, so it would be in the trailer and would match the toy. So, sometimes you get those little wins. But overall, yes, when the movie does not perform as great as the toy line may be, and I still stick by this toy line as being great, well, it's not going to last, because if the content bombs, no retailer's interested in carrying the toys. The next major reason for a toy line ending is because it's not affordable anymore. And I don't necessarily mean for the consumer. I mean, we're living in a day and age where you can buy a $600 playset online if you pre-buy it. So there tends to be no limit to what fans might be willing to spend doing this method. What I'm talking about is lines at retail. And the best example of this is Dino Riders, one of my favorite toy lines. And I tried to bring this back so bad, but there's a reason you can't bring it back, is it's too expensive to make. So Dino Riders is it's a creature-based line, or you might look at it as a vehicle-based line, where the creatures are the vehicles. And with any vehicle-based line, usually you have to have miniature figures, and the figures just weren't that miniature. They were, I think, 3 inches-ish? So that meant the dinosaurs had to be huge, and in order to make the dinosaurs huge, that was really expensive. There was also a lot of tooling involved, and those dinosaurs had a huge piece count. I mean, we're talking missiles and ladders and seats and armor and, all sorts of kind of things you could put on top of a dinosaur. So, despite the fact that it was extremely popular and people really liked Dino Riders, well, the people were just too big. In order to make the dinosaurs work with the riders and, the evil riders, the aliens, it just caused the dinosaurs to have to be ginormous. And by year 2 or 3, Tyco realized, wow, we actually can't afford to keep tooling this line. It requires pieces that are just too darn big. It's like having a new Millennium Falcon every year. So, yeah, you can kind of do one and call it a day, but when your entire line is based on giant things, it's tough. There wasn't an attempt to bring back Dino Riders in mini form, which I think is the form it would work well with, but these were slug figures, non-articulated, and people do still like, a little play value, so I think that's kind of where this one fell flat. But come on, some toy company, bring it back. Do it in, miniature form. I mean, the TV show is huge. You'd think it would be the right formula, but no matter how good the content is, the content may be good, but too expensive. The next reason toy lines tend to go away is because of kids' choice. And I'm not talking about the Nickelodeon Awards. I'm talking about the fact that most children, not all, but most want to feel ownership of both their toys and their generation and feel a separation from their parents. So when you take toys that you played with as a kid and put them in front of your child, they may think they're awesome. And there's a reason we saved all of our Legos and My Little Ponies. But if you look at something like Masters of the Universe Origins, this is one of Mattel's PR shots. The entire campaign was based around dad sharing his love of toys with son. That is clearly not that kid's dad. I mean, you can tell those are both models. Anyway, well, if this rang true, then in the 80s we would have seen toys from the 1950s be huge, right? Because that's the same time gap as we are now. We're 30 years out, almost 40. So you didn't really see kids in the 1980s wanting to wear Davy Crockett hats and, collect Davy Crockett dolls or whatnot, because that was seen as very old and that was my parents' stuff. I want something new. Now, of course, this is not universal, and especially with creative toys, things like Lego or Lite-Brite is a perfect example, which is having a really awesome renaissance from, was it Just Toys down in Florida, I think, brought this back as a Target exclusive, where you can buy Lite-Brite and do it again because it's an activity toy. Same things with Etch-a-Sketch. Plus, with the whole no batteries concept, they found a new way to market it. So anything that's a game or an activity, I mean, it's the reason why Monopoly and Uno have remained so popular for decades. But with a toy line, even going back to the 90s, kids want to define their own generation, and they want to feel like they have toys that are made for them. They're not just playing with their parents' stuff, and it's beyond toys. They want to have their own sense of life and sense of fashion.
Pants pockets. All kids in the future wear their pants inside out.
All right, so a good example of this is the sort of Mego toys making a comeback over the last 15 years, and I was part of this. I tried to bring them back at Mattel under the Retro Action line, but it didn't do too well. It did okay. Then going one step further, a few years later, Target doubled down on this trend and had an entire program that they created, they worked with Marty Abrams, who was the original creator of Mego back in the day, and he used his amazing connections in China to get pricing that was ridiculous. I was so impressed by the way he did this when he explained it. And yeah, Target got these toys for like $15 back when Marvel Legends was $20. They even gave them their own end cap. But at the end of the day, these toys just didn't work with the new generation. We were kind of like 20 years too late. And even Target wound up with a lot of stock that they had to clear out. The combination of brands was a little all over the map, some of them lesser known, some of them were even tied directly into 1970s culture. I mean, do kids today really know who Jimi Hendrix is? I mean, they should, but do they? So while you had all-star brands like Star Trek in there, it wasn't enough, but mostly it was because of the form factor. In fact, I found out later that the Target buyer didn't even know that these were made with rubber bands. And when he found out, he's like, wait, what do you mean? I just bought a program of toys made with rubber bands? So, I mean, it's not that he got snookered, he just wasn't aware of that. So, yeah, I mean, and if you look at, one of the new Megos, there's Peg Bundy in the middle next to some Marvel Legends figures. You can see, where the quality is and why kids would drift to current Marvel Legends toys over Amigo. It just doesn't have the same aesthetic. All right, the last one is when you have a toy line aimed at a very specific niche, and I'm talking a small one, meaning it's not something that's going to appeal to everyone, despite good intentions. But, you know what they say about, good intentions. Well, they sometimes lack broad appeal. So you can make a toy line, again, that your heart's in the right place, you're trying to be on trend, you're trying to be inclusive, but if it doesn't have broad enough appeal to a wide enough audience, then you're only making a niche toy. And a good example of this is a few years ago when Mattel created their creatable world of dolls that were basically genderless dolls. You could make them with long hair, short hair, skirts, shorts, whatever you wanted. You could make you could make your friends, you could make anyone. But the idea was they were clearly not meant to be boys or girls. They were just genderless toys. And it was on trend in a sense, I mean, that this was they were absolutely embracing what's sort of happening with, the generation that's in college. But when you're dealing with children, well, this doesn't really hit them as well. I mean, you might get parents who's like, oh, yes, this is absolutely what I want to teach my kids. But for the most part, kids really just weren't into this. And it didn't really hit. And man, it's amazing that I would actually feel nervous saying this, like, I'm going to hit cancel culture, but 1% of the world is trans, and that's just too much of a niche audience in order for a line to work. It's, again, I've brought this up, it's like communism. It's great in theory, doing a genderless doll, but in the real world, where you're dealing with a very small audience, that's absolutely the result of making a toy line that doesn't have wide appeal. You need to have units selling in the hundreds of thousands to be at mass retail. Now, this video really just scratched the surface. It went over some of the main reasons why toys sort of get let out to the scaffolding. There's plenty of others. And hey, which ones have you noticed? Have you noticed any, lines that have gone away and been able to pinpoint kind of exactly where the mistake was made? It could be in a mix. It could be character selection. It could be your dishwasher. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, please do pass it along. It's the best way to show support for this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.